Hi everyone. I was like, what's happening?
I know.
Welcome guys to another episode of Kel's and Betzy podcast where we're focused on raising capital, investing with purpose. So whether you are a new investor or experienced investor or even a business owner, understanding the art of raising capital is so crucial in today's competitive landscape. So today we will be navigating into the complex realm of understanding the nuances of creative financing, especially with private money lenders. And today's going to be fantastic. I'm your host, Kalisha, and I have my co host, Betzy. What's going on, girl?
Hey everyone, we want to welcome you guys. Thank you for watching. We're very excited for today's episode.
This is going to be.
Oh my gosh, it's just been a week, and we've been learning so much, and we have.
It's a lot.
I know. I think we both have our visionaries hats a little bit, and we've been seeing into the future, and we have a lot planned. And we're very excited for what we're doing and what we're doing for you and what we're learning.
And today we learned something really it's not completely new, but we touch a little bit, diving into deeper with investing with IRA accounts, the risk. And with that conversation, we will be bringing someone on who's in the space that can guide you guys who are looking into lending or have questions about investing with your retirement account in general. I'm not even going to get specific to say Roth 401k. I'm just going to say retirement account. So that should be a fun conversation to have. More details will be coming out soon with the time, but while we give some persons more time to come in, thank you for viewers who are live right now on our YouTube channel. Kels and Betzy, thank you guys for being on time. I love this.
Yeah. Put a comment there so that people can get that notification.
Yes,
We are live, please.
Tuning in. And if you guys are new to our channel, welcome. And if it's that you're existing fan or a supporter of us, like thank you for tuning in and always supporting us, watching our videos, commenting, liking. We appreciate you guys so much, even our listeners too. Like you guys are phenomenal. But you ready to dive into today's episode?
Let's do it.
So today we're talking about the nuances of creative finance. A lot of us are familiar with creative financing, subject to seller financing, and we hear about the fantastic things about it, the good, all that stuff, the money that you can make. But what a lot of persons don't talk about is just the risk, especially when you have private money lenders, cash involved, or money rather. So we have a familiar face here that's rejoining us today again. Maurice has been doing creative financing for a while, and the beauty about it, he has been using private money funds, and I won't say lender, but private money funds for newbies to do this, and he'll be sharing like how he's mitigating these risks and like things that will pop up to him, even being an experienced investor, and how he navigated those problems as well. So let's bring Maurice to the screen.
What's good? What's good?
Like, welcome back. See, that was
Yeah, we got me back at it again, huh?
Yes.
Back at it. I think this is a well needed conversation that we're supposed to have. I mean, it came up when after our first recording, and we're like, yeah, we definitely need to do a second episode just for this.
Yeah, and I mean, we talk about getting creative all the time, but and Maurice has been doing it for a very, very long time. So, Maurice, can you define what creative finance is for those people who haven't really seen it before? Because it is major to us, and we hear it a lot. But there's some people that actually have never heard about it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's basically another way to buy a property other than traditional, right? Most of us know of creative financing as a way to buy a house is to go to a lender, right? Go to a lender, get approved, they give you a loan, you can buy a property. So creative financing is being able to acquire a property or asset class without going to a bank. right? And there's multiple strategies you can use to do that, but can be a very powerful way to increase your portfolio.
And before we even go deeper into this conversation, we're just going to remind you guys of our disclaimer, which is showing on the screen, but Betsy's going to go over it.
Oh, yes. Yes. Oh my gosh, we almost forgot our disclaimer. The following information is for educational purposes only. Please do your own diligence. We do not provide financial, legal, or professional advice. Everything we talk about is from our experience. Every case is different. Please talk to a professional. Let us know if you need one.
Yes, yes, love it, love it. So, guys, again, it's just from our experience. If you have additional questions, yes, you can reach out to us, or you can always reach out to or your attorney or a CPA. So now that we get Maurice, like, because this is a full-blown conversation with the three of us, because Betzy and we're also familiar with creative financing. Why is it that apart from, can you differentiate with seller financing subject to for persons who
Yeah, yeah. So those are usually the two major strategies most everybody uses, right? Is seller finance is subject to. So seller finance is basically the seller is being the bank, right? You're going to take their equity and you're going to structure it in a way that you pay it over time, right? So you pay it back to them over time, and it could result, a lot of different things. There's four major parts to every deal, right? So there's the purchase price, there's the interest rate, there's down payment, and then there's the length of that, right? The term, what we call terms. So you can change any variation of those to fit everyone's needs, and that's why it's super powerful owner financing. And then subject two is you can buy a property legally, right? By keep taking over someone's mortgage, right? So you can buy it and you can leave the existing mortgage in place. We call that buying is subject to the existing mortgage. That's where the name comes from. So you can actually, they move out, you keep the mortgage there, you move in, the ownership transfers to you, and you can actually be the owner of that property, but yet the mortgage is in the seller's name.
Mhm. So why would you buy a property in using creative finance? Like, what are the benefits?
A ton of different benefits, but it may be maybe you're a new investor, right? And maybe you don't have enough experience, right, to go to hard money or to conventional and get a loan, right, outside your primary, or maybe you never even bought a primary, right, and you can't get financing right now, so it's a strong strategy. There may be where you use conventional financing for your first part of your portfolio, but you're limited, right? Most banks only let you have up to 6, some will do 8 properties. So if you want to get to 15, 20, there's have to be other strategies you use to buy properties. So that could work for you even as a seasoned investor, right? It could be maybe your credit, you build up your credit, your business credit, right? All these things can be reasons why it's hard for some investors to grow their portfolio. And if you learn creative finance, and it'll allow you to do those things without having to basically qualify through a lender or a bank to be able to grow your portfolio.
So with all this good stuff with creative, especially for someone who's unable to get qualified for a loan, for an investor, like what are like some of the risks associated with creative finance?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest risk is being able to honor what you put on paper, right? That's the biggest risk, right? I think when you get into creative finance, and the first thing you want to do is put a deal together real quick, right? You want to put it together, and you want to get into it without any credit or any history, right? And you do a payment that works for you. But a lot of people don't figure out how they're going to get out of that creative deal or take it the distance, right? You may do one that's for 5 or 6 years and there's a balloon. Well, how are you going to honor that balloon, right? Like, how do you get out of that? How do you, maybe you bring in private money lender to do the down payment and you got 5 years to do that, or even 12 months. Well, how are you going to cash that person out of it? How do you complete the whole deal? And I think that's what isn't talked about a lot is the structure of it we talk about, but we don't talk about how to get it to the finish line, right? Or how to complete it, that transaction. And I think that's the risk, man, because you can create the scenario to get into the deal and cash flow it for a period of time or pay down the debt. But then you get to the end and you don't have a plan on what you were going to do to honor the balloon or refinance out the subject to, right? Or buy them at least purchase, right?
And what I've seen a lot of times is that person be like, "Oh, this is the perfect subject too." Okay, great. And then they would mention the cash flow is $100, and I'm like, "Okay, how did you get that $100? Because I'm in a negative." And they're not factoring if you're going to take a PML, what interest are you paying the PML? Because that's coming out of the income as well. A lot of persons don't consider that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you have to have everything considered. Another thing that people don't consider is if they have to refinance,
Yeah.
right? What their LTV is at refinancing, right? And that's the good thing about creative financing is it can let you target that. If you know that at the beginning, you can target that to make sure you have it in the moment you need it, right? So let's just say you're doing a seller finance and you want to refinance. You got a balloon in 7 years, 5 years, right? You can structure it at the beginning to make sure that your LTV, your loan to value, is under that 70% when you know that your long-term financing is not going to do anything over 70% of the ARV. So you can structure it that way you get there, but that's not where a lot of people look at that, right? They just look at it as that deal. I'll deal with it in 5 years. And then next, 5 years is on top of them. And I'm over leveraged, right? I can't refinance it. Some of the money's stuck in the deal. I got to call the seller back after 5-7 years and be like, I can't honor your balloon, right? So all the work, all the trust you've done up to this point, you just threw it all away in an instant on one phone call because
and you find lenders are asking those questions. Like some of the more savvy lenders right now, especially when they're putting up a lot of capital, they're like, okay, how do you plan to pay me? Like, how do you plan to pay the interest or the principal at the end of 12 months? Are you going to take out another loan? Well, we've seen sometimes we're super upfront. Hey, we need this loan for 12 months. Here are options. Option 1, we sell. Option 2, we find another PML and bring them in an equity partner. Option 3, we refinance. So you gotta have those exits lined up, as you mentioned.
Yeah, for sure. And you have to stay true to your deal. The math is what the math is, right? The math is what it is. And so I'll have some PMLs come and say they want 12 months, they want 6 months. I'm doing it based on me carrying to the finish line. It doesn't matter if I need the money to close the deal, but you only want 6 months, and I know that it's probably going to take me 12. It makes no sense to go 6 months, right? So I stick to what the math is, right? If the math telling me 8 months, I'm gonna ask for 12 or 15, so I have cushion because real estate, man, it changes. It can change and it can turn. And the reality of real estate is that what people don't realize either is when a cycle changes in real estate, it takes 4 to 6 months before it catches up with us as investors, right? So let's just use the last instance, right, where the interest rates went up in November, October, right? They started to go up, right? But we didn't really see the effects of that until April, right? April of that, because we got to let that see what that looks like. How do people respond to that? Right. There was like 4 or 5 months where we didn't even know what values of properties were. We had no idea because we didn't have enough inventory to tell. Right. So for us as investors, when a cycle changes, you got to give at least 6 months to know what our new normal is. Right. So if you do a 6-month loan and the market changes, you need enough time, if that changes in that time, to figure out what are my exit strategies. And we don't consider that when we're raising money, when we're putting a creative deal together. We just want to go right to where we're going to be done. All right, it's going to take me 4 months to rehab it. I want to be out in 5 months. You give yourself no cushion, no variation of anything. And so I stick to my numbers. I stick to my numbers and my contingencies.
That's the difference too. Where what I'm seeing is that lenders want quick return, and they're like, okay, I need a loan for 6 months. As you said, you need a loan for 12 months. But they will come to you and they were like, hey, I don't want to do 12 months. I want to do 5 or 6 months. And then maybe that investor is so desperate for the cash, they'll take the 5-6 months. And they don't think about, okay, if you're doing a fix and flip, you need time to rehab. When that is done, you have time that needs to be listed on the market. Then if you come in with an end buyer who's doing a conventional loan, that's an additional 30 days. So your 6 months is already like done, or you gone into it. So I love the fact that you mentioned giving yourself extra time, and just stick with the time that you have. Might as well you lose out on a deal than stuck in something and you can't even repay.
Yeah, but I also think that that's where our jobs come in as seasoned investors, right? Is to educate these people that want to lend on why I can't do it in 6 months. Like that, the reality of that is too tight, and I rather get to the finish line and get you the returns I say I can get you than me promise you that, and then I'm calling you in 6 months with the pity party, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's our job to educate them and them understand how it really works. Like you just said, the way you just explained it out, right? Okay, rehab scheduled for 4 months. You know, I got to get it staged. I got to get it cleaned up. I got to get it ready. Then it got to hit the market. Even if it goes 30 days, then it takes another 45 days for the buyer to close because they got conventional. So I'm already at 6 months right there, and I ain't even signed no documents, right? So it's explaining that, right? So they understand, like, okay, like I want 6 months, but in reality, it's more 8 to 10, maybe 10 to 12, right? So it's our job to kind of do that, because if we're all doing that and we explain it to them every time they go to each investor, they're going to hear the same story.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I can't do 6, man. That's too tight. Like, I need this. And they'll get that out of their mind. But somebody will raise their hand and say, oh, I'll do 6 months. And it's just it's not fair. Right. So then they get that stuck in their head. And now they want to come along to all of us and want a 6-month loan. And I tell them, like, you know, it's if it's 6 months or 12 months, you're not losing out. You're still making interest, right? Your money's still working for you, right? So, like, I get it, but a lot of people will say, I want 6 months because I just don't want that much risk. It's actually more riskier to get somebody to say guarantee you 6 months in this business than it is for somebody to say 12.
And then you get the money back in 6 months and it's sitting there, and you're still waiting for a deal, and you're not making money when it's sitting there. Then it's another process of doing more paperwork for a whole nother deal. So it's like, what would you do?
Yes.
And you can't come back to me, right? If I get you in 6, you can't come back to me, because the amount of stress you put me through to get the 6 done, I'm good. Like, I'm glad we got it done, but unless you're gonna give me 12 of them, I don't want it. You know what I mean?
I love that you said that it's riskier having it at that amount of time, because it's true. Like, I need that buffer.
Yeah. And what I'm seeing now too, and I've been over the weekend analyzing a bunch of deals that could be used as a wrap, and persons will have the entry fee, and they don't consider, like, they'll say, all right, the entry fee is $20,000 plus closing cost. And when I come back, I'll be like, yeah, my entry fee is like 60-some thousand. And they're like, how did you get to that? So I'm like, okay, then you have holding costs, 3 months of holding costs. A lot of persons are not factoring that into a wrap. And then if I'm going to do a wrap, I'm borrowing the 60. And if that person coming down payment has like 30,000, I have to explain to my PML, hey, you're going to have an extra $20,000 left in the deal. I can pay you back in 6 months. What is the exit then? What would you recommend for that approach?
Yeah, well, let's talk about wraps. Let's get down. Let's go down that. Let's go down that. Let's go down that. It's a real popular strategy you hear about, and there are situations that fit it. But me personally, as an investor, I do not do wraps right out the gate. I will not buy a property and do a wrap right out the gate for a number of different reasons. The first and number one is because of Dodd-Frank, right? The Dodd-Frank laws, there's certain rules and regulations you can do on wraps, right? So let's just say we got a subject to, and that seller let us do it, but they said they want us to refinance it in 3 years, right? They want us to refinance it in 3 years. And then we decide we're going to wrap that property. Well, if we sell it to a retail buyer, we cannot do any balloons shorter than 5 years. So now, to get the seller out in the 2 to 3 years, don't you have to construct some type of balloon on a wrap to be able to get the underlying line loan off, right? You can't do that on retail, right? Now, if I'm doing it to one of you guys, an investor, I can do it all day. But to a retail buyer, which is, or what some people call a homestead buyer, that's a retail buyer, right? And so you cannot have any balloons, right? You have to freeze the interest rate over a certain period of time, right? Usually, I think it's the first 5 years. I think there has to be a frozen interest rate. So you can't even bump it up, because that's sometimes some people say use that strategy to make them refinance, bump the interest rate up, and the payment modes and forces them to refinance. But you can only do that after a certain period of time. And you can't go higher than, I think it's 12%, 12 or 15%. I can't remember exactly, but you can't go above that, right? So you have to be conscious of that. The other rule is, I have a rule as an investor. When I buy a property, my rule is down payments cover up problems. So if there's a problem with the seller, I know to bring in down payment now that will solve that problem. It goes the same way for wraps. If someone is willing to put down $70,000, $60,000, they're probably covering up a problem, right? And the way that I see a wrap is, you want to do a wrap for a reason, because you can make interest off of it, right? The underlying might be 5 and you can go 7 or 8, right? And make the difference. Well, isn't the whole point of putting it together is to build that wealth, to build the long game in that, right? So to me, I'd rather go with a buyer with a lower down payment that's going to do right by that loan over a period of time. I don't want a large down payment and then month 2, I'm trying to locate him and figure out what's going on because he just gave me all of his cash to get into the property. And that's why I see it, right? So if I have to require that much down, for one, I didn't structure the deal good enough. It's not a good enough deal if I need $70,000 down. That's how I see it, right? I need to go back and restructure.
But let's say you get you get into a wrap deal for like $40,000, $40,000 to get into the wrap deal. The person comes in with a down payment of, let's say, 20,000. It's still a good deal, and you want to use PML. How would you structure that deal with the PML?
Yeah, it depends on it's all the numbers, right? It's how much cash, because the property can produce what it can produce. That's all it can really do. So it starts there. How much does it produce, right? And if it produces this amount, well, then how many times can I cut that pie up into all the strategies I need to be able to purchase it, right? I got to have cash to bring it current or to put it down for the seller, and then I got to pay that PML, or I have to pay the seller some, and I still got the underlying mortgage. You can only cut the pie so many times. So it starts with what the property can produce. And then when you know what it can produce, then you reverse backwards and you figure out what strategies you have, which ways you can do, right?
One way that I've done it is we have the PML come in, and to avoid rushing in 6 months to paying that loan, then we said, hey, come in as an equity partner. That way, we know even if we should switch and do a lease option, and that person comes in with $8,000, that means the PML is not worried about getting their funds back in a couple of months. It's there. So I'm finding now if you decide to do a wrap, still have a lease option as a back end, and then ensure that that PML is okay with their funds being locked in tighter to the deal. And one way to doing that is offer equity, and you guys just split the cash flow.
Yeah. And me, I'm the other way around. If I'm doing a wrap, I'm doing a lease option first always. I'm doing a lease option first always. So I build trust with that person I want to wrap. They're going to lease it for me for 12 months.
Yeah.
And then I'm going into a wrap. So that's always first on the table anyway on a wrap for me. Because in court, if somebody decides, right? Because the problem is when you have somebody put down that much money in a property, they can challenge that they have equitable interest, right? They have equity in that property putting down that much money.
Yeah.
So when they want to challenge you and take you to court about it, what steps did you take? What did you do to make sure that they could afford this loan that you gave them? And that's going to be important, right? So by doing a lease option for 12 months, hey, I did it for 12 months. He paid. He never was late. It was pretty close to exactly what his mortgage was going to be. And I felt good about it. You're going to have a hard time a judge being like, okay, that was predatory, because they consider predatory lending when you don't verify and make sure this person can afford the situation that you put them into. So that's why you have to be careful with wraps. So I like to do that 12-month. That goes through fine. We go roll right into a wrap.
Man, which you brought up a good point. Just be making sure that that person is able to pay the loan. In my case, I use I can never pronounce this fast.
RMLO.
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 It's super slow.
Yeah.
It's like RMLO. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
So using that person, it really helps for you to get a qualified buyer.
Yeah. And for you guys that don't understand what that is, it's just a registered mortgage lending officer, right? And they'll basically underwrite it as if someone's going to get a mortgage, but you just pay them for that paperwork so that you have it, right? And because you're giving the loan, you're issuing that loan to them, right? So it lets you do that. The most important thing that is that the RMLO has to be licensed in the state where you're doing the transaction. So if I'm in Colorado and I want to do one in Ohio or Memphis, Tennessee, I got to find RMLO in that state. I can't use somebody in Colorado.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the thing to be careful on that situation. But yeah, you can only do it. I think you can do 2 of those without an RMLO. And then after that, you have to be using an RMLO. So I just use one off jump to get that done.
A little bit technical with maybe, I know the answer, but for those who don't, when you use a private money lender, do you just do a regular promissory note? Do you put them in second lien, even if it's for 4 months and you're going to wrap it?
Yeah, I do. I always give them a lien position as much as I can. Always give them one. That's what secures the money, right? That's what trumps my performance.
Yeah.
right? They're basing it off my performance that I'm going to perform in this transaction. But if I don't, what secures and protects them is that lien position, right? Because I can't move the property unless they're notified because they're clouding the title. So I think you should always do that at all. If the very least, at least give them a lien position so that they're secured, right? And that trumps your performance, right? Because things can happen.
Have you ever had a case where you did some creative structuring for a deal and you use PML and you're like, oh crap, I need to switch my exit, or I need to go back to this PML because this deal is not working out how I want it to. Tell us
Yeah.
about
Yeah, for sure. So I did a PML. I did an all PML flip in the last year. It's all PML to purchase it, rehab, do everything. We're supposed to be out in about 4 months. That we were under schedule, but the interest rates moved up on us, right? So we couldn't move the property. We went a couple months, couldn't move it. So I decided to refinance it in some long-term finance and then put it into my rent-to-own program, so that way I could get what I needed on the profits and provide somebody to be able to own it. But my PML, I had to go back to them. So we could get it refinanced, but we couldn't get all their money out of it. So we got it into a long term. I think we were able to get probably 60% of their money, 70% of their money out of it, and we had to leave it in there. So what I did is we refinanced it. I wired them back that amount of money, and what was left over, I gave them the default rate. So whatever the default rate was on that promissory note, that's what I gave them on the remaining amount for another 12 months. So I knew I had a family that would buy it.
Expand a little bit on when you mentioned the default rate.
Yeah.
So when you do a promissory note, you do what your interest rate is going to be, 9%, 10%. That's what you're going to give them on their money annualized, right? Well, there's another section that says default. If I default, the rate goes to this, right? So the minute that I default on it, they start earning money on the remaining balance at that default rate, right? And so what I did to make it work for the PML was, like, listen, I was supposed to cash it out, and at this time we didn't. I'm going to get you as much as I can, and all the money that's left in there, I'm going to use a default rate from this point forward going the next 12 months. Now, I knew the deal would pay for it and it covered itself, right? But that was my way. My profits went down tremendously. But what I did was I was able to pivot, make sure that my lender makes his money that I promised them, and then makes a little bit more for the headache because I'm having to extend it. And I say this a lot to PMLs. If you're going to work with an investor, make sure they had a skill set to be able to pivot. You know, I wouldn't invest in anybody that has this a one-trick pony, right? That only does one strategy and doesn't know another way, because things happen in this business.
Oh yeah.
You can pivot and do something different, have a skill set, how to adjust and go. You want that person calling you saying, hey, this is what we're supposed to do, but this is the plan. This is what I'm going to do. And there's enough meat on the bone to make sure that I get you beyond this point, right? And so that's why every time I put a deal together, I believe in 3 exit strategies. That third one is a stretch, but 2 at least I know I can move no problem.
2 at least is like, I was talking to someone, they're like, I've been giving you creative deals and you keep telling me no. It's like, yeah, because I only have 1 exit.
Yeah.
1 exit, and I'm getting people money involved. Like, I need to ensure, like, I can confidently tell that PML that, hey, your money's going to be protected.
Yeah, and I think that's, like, by us doing creative financing, that's the advantage right now in the market we're in. Money is expensive, right? It's hard to refinance anything. It's hard to buy something and the rents cover it, right? It's hard to do that. So creative financing is really, really important. But the main thing is how you pay the money back.
Yes.
Because that's how you can make your profits. And a lot of my deals, I can resell them exactly what I bought them for and still make money, because it's how I structure how I pay it back. And that's what you should be thinking about. You should be targeting that. I care about my debt staying still or either going down at a rapid rate. So I have a minimum of $700 a month. I want the principal pay down at least $700 a month. So I don't look at any deal that doesn't even hit that, because I know in a 2-month, 36-month, that's a good profit for me. If I had to sell the property exactly what I bought it for, I've created profit by what I paid back. And so that's my standard, right? And the same thing with owner financing. I'm not going nothing under $700 paid to them, because I want that debt going down at a rapid rate. So that way I'm protected. So I'm protecting my private money lender. I'm protecting my company. I'm protecting the deal, because I'm going down at a rate. So that rate allows me to know how long my term needs to be. If I know that I'm going to get $700 a month and I know I got to be under this number to be under my 70% refinance, that tells me how long the term needs to be.
Yeah.
It's just math.
And right there too is like being able, I think we spoke about this at the last episode, it's we have to educate the PMLs, and educating means showing them examples of how deals are structured and how to ensure that they are safe as well. Because a lot of persons still, everything that you just talked about, a lot of lenders don't even know that. They
Yeah.
just don't have return in their head. Even
Yeah.
investors don't know that too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's educate them and protect the deal, man. Like, this is real estate. There's not that many of us. It seems like there's a lot of us. There's not that many of us, and so our reputation is everything. Not
yeah,
even amongst each other, but amongst the people you're working with, right? And
Yes.
so I believe in not giving false hope to anybody, right? So if I don't want to do that, and I want to say, hey, come work with me, lend with me, be on one of my deals. I want to make sure I got a solid deal. And if I don't have a solid deal, I got to make it a solid deal or I skip on it.
yeah,
But no matter what, I know I can go different ways with it. I can move them around different ways.
Mhm.
Even if I get some that come up where you got to be cashed out, right? We had a flip that's going wrong. We got to cash out a PML. I can bring in another PML because I made that amount so small that I had a lot of people that I can probably resource to replace it, right? And that's one thing people say that too, like, well, I'll just replace it with a PML at one time. Well, what are you trying to replace? Because if you're trying to replace 85,000, 135,000, you have a smaller more amount of people. But if
Mhm.
you can make that lend 20,000, 40,000, 50, you have a lot wider range of people that can replace that, right? So that's just as important, right?
Mhm.
It's always a strategy, it's an extra strategy. Well, I'll just replace the PML, but what am I trying to replace, right? Because it's not the 50 that I need, it's the 50 plus interest.
Yeah.
that, that is it.
Exactly.
Ah,
So
you
being conscious of that and knowing where I'm at, okay, well, then if I have to replace the 50 plus interest and then I have to put somebody else in it, it starts at that amount plus interest. So
yeah,
where does that remove my bottom line, right? If the deal was going to profit 30, but I had to replace a PML halfway through it, now my 30 turns maybe to 15, 25, right?
I love
Yeah.
that you brought that up because a lot of persons don't think about that.
Yes.
That when you have the principal payment, even if, like, I'm going back to wrap again because a lot of this is very popular now. 6 months, you borrow 50,000. Yes, you don't, and by the end of 6 months, you don't have that amount to repay the lender. What do? Fine, you go ahead and you raise more capital. But a lot of persons don't consider the interest payment that you're no longer raising 50 at this point. You're maybe raising 55 or 60K. And sometimes too, like lenders, when you ask, how will you repay my money? Don't tell them that, oh, the first thing is that you're gonna find another PML to replace them.
Mhm.
Like we've had, like when we started raising capital, persons would tell us, oh, I'll just find a PML to replace them, or I'll just use my money. And I'm like, why would you do that? Like no
Yeah.
one wants to hear
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
out, like
Yeah.
other exits.
Yeah, but that's that rule, right? Like I said, right now in the market we're in, your debt needs to be frozen or it needs to be going down.
Yeah.
So if you're doing PMLs and you're waiting to the end to give them, your debt is growing, right? By all means, try to pay them at least interest only payments, right? And if you can't do that, then the deal's probably not good enough. On a flip is different. On a flip is different because you're betting on appreciation. I get that. But when we're talking about these other strategies like midterm rentals, short-term rentals, long-term rentals, right? Any of the other strategies, don't bet on the appreciation, man. Just the property will produce this, and then that means how many different ways can I pay people? How many times can I cut that pie up and do it? And you have to adjust the deal to make that work, because if you're letting your debt grow in a market that we're in right now, you're going to find yourself in problems at the end of it. It's going to be hard to do it because you don't know what appreciation is. We can't bet on that like we have been able to do the last 2 years,
Yeah.
right? So you have to be having that debt frozen. And so interest only payment does what? It freezes that debt. And I'm paying their interest as we go. So now I know I got that 50. I just got to cover that 50. It ain't the 50 plus 7, right? It's 50 because I'm paying their interest as we go, right?
Mhm.
Or you're trying to do principal and interest if it's enough to do it, whatever it is. But just consider that when you're putting one together right now.
And that's one thing that, as you mentioned, I'm just going to reemphasize it with paying. If you can afford to pay the interest each month, pay it. At least at the end of the term, you're only worried about the principal amount. Because I see a lot of persons just push. I want the interest and principal. I want to pay that at the end, but they don't account that monthly payment still in their numbers. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Cool.
What I want to know is, man, I just lost my train of thought. This happens.
It's okay. I have a question.
Yeah.
No.
what would you recommend for the people who are newer and they want to make sure they do their numbers correctly? What should they do? Where should they go to learn, or
Mm,
what, how do they learn
uh,
what information is good out there?
yeah. Uh, I mean, we all know the person right now, if he's going to go to learn something and have it all encompassed in one space, is probably Pace Morby. He's probably has all the information all in one to go and really learn, right? But I believe if you could find a mentor, if you could find somebody who has done it a lot and done a lot of different transactions, I think you'll learn a lot, because I think that's where you can fail in this game, is that the nuances, the logistics of it, right? Of
Mm,
the paperwork, of how to make sure that that's right, that it makes sense. So to
Yeah.
me, a mentor is going to be the strongest. You can learn the principles, right? The principles of creative finance, you can learn that, right? But you're not going to get that necessarily unless you work with someone and have a mentor that's going to say, yeah, exactly, we can do a wrap, but this is the paperwork we need to do. These are
Yeah.
things we need to consider, right?
Yeah.
These are the risks behind this and doing this, and having an underlying mortgage, right? Like, you need to understand those things, because that's what gets people in trouble. And one thing about creative finance is that once a deal goes bad, it's hard for another investor to save you, because usually when it goes bad, it's usually on a legal side of it.
Yeah.
So I can't come in and be like, oh, let's just change the structure to this. We've already locked down terms, money, I mean, it's already in place. So it's hard to be rescued when it becomes bad, because it's usually already documented and it's hard to get out of it, man. And it's usually a legal issue at that point.
Okay. What are your thoughts on, let's say you're back in a situation like that and you're unable to repay that PML? What are your thoughts on giving equity and cash flow?
I think it's okay. I think it's okay if it fits the situation. Fits the situation. The first thing I'm gonna do though is I'm going back to the seller of my PMLs, right? Like we said, our reputation is so important, right? And so if you've done everything you said you're going to do, paid on time, get them what they want to, communicate it with them throughout the project, throughout that deal, you probably have a pretty good chance to go back and say, hey guys, this is what's going on, right? This is what's going on. My renter, hasn't been paying. I got to get them evicted. Can I pause the payments for 4 months, but I'll make it back up this way, right? I'll increase the interest rate by 2% until I catch up what I'm owed back, right? Until I get back on the good, and we'll kick back in, right? I think there's conversations, because there's other ways to go with it, but it's all about your relationship with these people, man. It's all
Bingo.
about how much transparent you are and how safe they feel with you. And that's why I say, like, having multiple ways to do with something, having that skill set to be like, all right, what else can I do? What else can I do on this? You know what I mean? What else can I okay, I can't pay it because I got to evict this tenant, but I'll give you the next 6 months of my profits 100% till I make it back right. Then I'll pick back up my payments, right? I'll pick back up the regular payment. There's a
And
number of different ways in this space you can do it, but you just got a skill set to be able to do it.
I love that you're bringing up all these things, and maybe like for persons who are watching right now, and if you're listening in the future, you may be thinking, yeah, but I can't come up with all those ideas. I think what a lot of persons, and we've experienced this, Maurice, you've experienced it with me, where we're stuck or we can't figure something out, but we're afraid to ask for help. That is like a lot of persons' weakness, is like you're stuck and you're like, okay, this is where I'm at. I need some ideas. But simply reaching out to persons who are experiencing that field, hey, this is where I'm stuck. What are your thoughts? Or make a post. So I find a lot of persons
Yeah.
in this right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I actually get that question a lot. Like, hey, how do you find that out? Or like, how do you overcome these situations?
yeah.
Which is
Yeah, so let's talk about that real quick, since we're touching base on it. We hear the saying all the time, our network is our net worth, right? And so when you hear that, and what most people, how they interpret that is, I need to go to these events. I need to go to all the meetups and go all this and capture all these phone numbers of all these people, right?
Yeah.
And they say, this is my network, right? But your network don't mean shit if they don't answer the phone.
Yeah.
Right? If they don't answer the phone when you need something, that's not the network we're talking about. We're talking about a network of people that if you call them, they'll answer the phone and help you get through those reasons. If Kalisha or you call me, I answer the phone, right? And that's the person in your network that's bringing you value, right? Because that's what it's about. Will they answer the phone and answer this question for me, or can they use their network to get it if they don't know it? And so I think that's what we have to back down from. and stop being so concerned about going to all these events and capturing as many phone numbers as possible and capturing people that you build a relationship with that can bring you value. You know, right? I got a rule at every event that I go to that I'm going to meet somebody or an idea that brings me $2,000. If it doesn't happen, I'm not going. Right. So a person or
Wait,
something I've learned.
are you at 2,000?
$2,000. It has to be a $2,000 worth it to me. And the reason why I say that is to the point to this day, with what I've made in real estate, I'm worth $1,400 an hour, right? So if I'm going to go to an event, or if I'm going to go do something, it has to bring me more than what I'm worth hourly. So if that event, if I'm going to it, well, do I feel like I'm gonna get some value out of it before I even buy the ticket? Is it in line with my goals, my principle, where my company's going? I don't go to them just to go to them. I go to them because it's got to bring me a $2,000 either idea or a person, right? So when I'm having a conversation with somebody at a networking event, I'm talking about what I'm doing and what I'm looking for, what I'm trying to figure out. If they're not reciprocating me, I'm like, hey, nice to meet you. Have a good night.
Yeah.
The next one, right? Because I'm there to find my $2,000 person or my $2,000 idea. And when you start to think that way of it, you start to make sure these events in your circle and the people that you're putting in your phone are bringing you value.
Man, it's like when I go to networking events now, and I heard another guest, Christian Hernandez, mention it too. He's like, when I go to a networking event, two things. He has to find a PML, one person who's a PML, and one person to bring him deals.
Same.
If you cannot find those two, that event was not a success.
Yeah.
It's a money-making activity.
Yeah.
For sure.
That's exactly what you said, a whole money. But no, you're totally right with considering those.
Your time.
Yeah. Yeah. Once you figure that out, it's super clear. This business is about being super clear. That's all this business is. The more clear you are, the more you define what you want to do in this space, what your why is, not just saying I want to my family and all that stuff, but narrow it down. Like why do I think real estate will give me the life I want to give and believe that? When you're clear on that, when you're clear on your strategy, when you're clear on what you want from individuals and what you want to pour back into people, right? I love helping people all the time, but I'm clear about how I'm gonna pour back into you, right? We don't take action steps. We don't do those things. I'm not going to pour into you, right? So when you're clear about those things, it makes this business a lot easier and it makes you get to where you're trying to go a lot faster. So implement it in everything. It's in every single thing you do.
That's it. Like it's like when I know this is a little bit sidetracked when persons ask, I want you to tell me everything that you know about raising capital. I'm like,
I know. Watch the YouTube.
And I would say, go watch the YouTube, or I would like check out this book, or read this article, and they're like, eh. And I'm like, if you don't want to take the time to do that research, I need to tell you everything that I've learned the time I've been in here. One phone call, no.
Yeah. And I mean, my response to that person is, I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you. You're probably not going to succeed in this business, right? You're really not going to probably do well because you didn't even approach me with any percentage, right? You came at me with a 0% effort, 0%, and you want me to get you to 100. That's not how this business works. Right? That's not how it works, man. You got to come with me at least 15, 10, 5, right? 5. Like, listen, man, all I got is a business card. Like, you help me, I'm like, word. At least you're doing something, right? Let's talk, right? But if you have no effort into that, it just ain't gonna happen. So my response always is, let's just stop right here, though. Let's just stop right here and just say this probably ain't for you. This probably isn't for you.
Honesty is the best.
I always love how Maurice always puts it like straightforward. This is it. No. So easy. Let's
get to it, right? Let's decide if you want this or not, right? Let's get to it.
But before we wrap up, I just want to go over the things that we discussed.
Yes.
We spoke about the risk of creative financing, especially structuring deals with PML, how to have multiple exit strategies as well. And a note to private money lenders is if you're working with an investor, just ensure that investor is diverse in different skills. Not only a fix and flipper or not only someone focused on short-term rental, that person needs to be super diverse. So at least they can pivot to ensure that if anything happens, your money is fully protected. Maurice, do you have any tips or advice for any of our listeners before we wrap up?
No, I mean, I think, like I said, everything we've kind of discussed so far, right? Just be confident in your deal. right? If you want to raise money for a deal, you have to be confident in your deal. You have to understand it. You have to know that you can get that thing to the finish line. That helps a lot when it comes to raising private money, right? It helps a lot when you're working with sellers, right? And don't be afraid to be transparent, man. Say like, this is where I go. This property, I want to do this, but if that doesn't work, I can do this, right? Like, failure sometimes gives people comfort, right? Like, well, if you fail at this, I know that you're going to try to do this, right? So, be transparent. Everything doesn't have to be so, so just hidden in the numbers and just trying to overshadow it. The deal is what it is. The property's only going to produce what it can produce. And the deal is what it is. So share it. You know what I mean? Even when you're raising money for other people's deals, right? Sit down with them and talk to them about their deal like you're going to invest in it.
Yeah.
Sit down and go through the deal with them like you're going to invest in it. That way, when you're trying to bring in somebody who's trusted in you, you know the deal and you feel good about it, right? So I just believe in transparency, man, and understanding everything you're talking about. Don't talk about a wrap if you don't know how to really put a wrap together. Don't talk about subject to if you never did a subject to deal, right? If you never completed a lease purchase, like don't talk about it, man. Just talk about what you got experience in, because that is false hope, and false hope will always rear its head at some point. So that's my advice, man, is learn it, be good at it, do it, right? We're too quick to just say, I want all these things, right? I want to wholesale, but then I want to flip, and then eventually I'm going to do my portfolio. Just get good at wholesaling, because everything else will come across your table. Everything else will come, right? If I want to be a capital raiser, then be a capital raiser. Get good at that. Be efficient at that. Build a system that's flawless, and everything, all the opportunities will come around. Somebody will hit you up like, hey, man, I got an equity deal. If you can find this raise for me, you get on this multifamily equity deal, right? Because you're good at raising private money. So, become good in your niche, and whatever that thing is that registers with you the best, and everything else will come, man. But just learn it, man. Learn it and be 100.
All these nuggets that you've dropped. Thank you so much, Maurice. Like,
Good.
seriously, I'm going to have to rewatch this because it's been so great. I mean, you've kind of like been dropping them here and there, and it's just been so subtle, but also so amazing.
Yeah. Well, y'all know what it is. Anytime you need me to come on and speak to the church, we can come on. No big deal. No big deal.
All right.
No, but
It's been awesome. Thank you again. But whether you are looking to finance a real estate project, launch a new venture, or start a new business, we hope this episode gave you guys all some insights and strategies so that you can navigate on the raising capital side for everything. It's raising capital so central to everything that we do in business. So you guys can also invest in purpose. See you guys next time.
bye, guys. Thank you, Maurice.
Yeah.